Secularism is very appealing to us, and to understand why, we have to sort of define it first. So by secular, if you think about secular in a political sense, for example, secular means that a country does not defer to the authority of a given religion or God in its public life, right? So an individual in the same way would be secular and have a secular worldview if they don't defer to the authority of a given religion or God in their own life. But here's the thing, and this is what's really important to understand. When you take away that authority of a given religion or God, you are not left with no authority. You are left with the authority of you, of the self. And that is the tie that functionally binds the worldviews of millions of people. They might have all kinds of individual beliefs, but it comes back to your source of authority, the authority of the self. Whereas in a biblical worldview, our authority, of course, should be God and what he has revealed through his inspired and authoritative word. So this is the huge distinction that I really work out in the book. And the Bible tells us why secularism is so appealing. Because ultimately the Bible tells us that every single one of us by our very nature wants to go our own way. We want to go away from God. We want to be our own authority. We want to be the boss. Every single one of us, even as Christians, we struggle with the flesh as well. We struggle with wanting the authority of the self. So yes, secularism is what surrounds us in this culture. And it also happens to be an extremely appealing worldview because of our very nature as human beings, based on what the Bible itself tells us.
Well, this reminds me of the common slogan, "You do you," and I'm trying to think. Was it during? I don't watch sports except for the Super Bowl, and then I just choose a team to cheer for. Of course, I was cheering for the Rams, and they won. That was good. But I don't watch the halftime show because it just has gotten so gross. But there was something that came on, maybe it was a commercial, and I was listening to the lyrics of it, and the appeal of a lot of these commercials is reflecting this dogma now that comes across everywhere. You do you. Whatever you want, you can do it. Don't listen to other people. Don't be conformed to other people's ideas of what's good and right and beautiful. You do you. And of course, all the characters that are in these are these really hip folk, and they're hip because they're so extreme and compared to the conventional people. And this is the message that's being shouted. That's appealing. And especially you mix in the sexual stuff. That adds a whole new dimension here, the sexual latitude and liberty. This is really, really hard, I think, for Christians to face. Do you think that this is part of, we haven't talked about deconstruction yet, I want to talk some more about the secularism, but do you think this press of the culture looking so appealing is part of why Christians are now deconstructing and questioning the legitimacy of their own prior convictions?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the book, I break down these 4 sort of tenets of a secular worldview: that feelings are the ultimate guide, happiness is the ultimate goal, judging is the ultimate sin, and God is the ultimate guest, that there's no reason for any confidence that God exists or has revealed himself in some way. So when we are constantly surrounded by this messaging, I compare it to a marketing campaign. It's sort of a ubiquitous marketing campaign for a worldview that we see in Super Bowl ads, that we see in the entertainment that we consume, that we see literally on billboards for products. It's everywhere. It is like a worldview that is being marketed to us. So after a while, given that our human nature ultimately wants to go our own way, when we keep seeing these messages that you're the only expert on you, you're the one, your feelings should be the guide because no one can tell you what to do. You're the only one who knows your feelings. And happiness is the goal. If you're not feeling happy, something must be wrong. If you're not happy, then you need to pursue something else based on your feelings being the guide. And so when people start to hear these messages so much, absolutely it makes you question what you believe, because if you're not totally happy, and that's supposedly the goal as culture puts it to us, then maybe you start thinking, hey, all these people who are deconverting or deconstructing, they are saying they're very happy now. Maybe they have something and they figured something out that I haven't. I need to pursue this happiness. And so that's not the goal according to a biblical worldview. Of course, we would like to be happy in our circumstances, but it's the joy found in the Lord, which is a much deeper type of happiness than just these temporary feelings that we have. So it goes back to also being biblically literate and knowing what the Bible says. Because when you understand that we're supposed to deny ourselves and take up our cross to follow Jesus because he is the truth, that's such a different view than what the culture is telling us. But when we can't distinguish between those, we get sucked in and we start thinking there's something wrong with our faith or something wrong with the truth of Christianity.
Well, there has been this strain in Christianity for a long time that I have always thought was, in a certain sense, overly triumphant. Everything's wonderful, and it ought to always be wonderful. So you have this strain that isn't entirely transparent and honest about the struggles, but then you also have the word faith theology that say we ought to be happy, we ought to be fulfilled, we ought to be rich, we ought to be healthy, all of those things, and that's part of godliness. And sometimes I remind people, the book of Hebrews was written to suffering Christians. The book of 1 Peter was written to suffering Christians. 1 Thessalonians, suffering Christians. 2 Thessalonians, suffering Christians. Philippians, suffering, right down the line. Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 2 Timothy, written by Paul, who was in prison. And so this is not the biblical view of reality. The biblical view of reality is something different entirely. And I don't, my one concern, I don't know if you have an opinion about this, but this is a concern that I have of the church communicating what is true, not just true about Christianity, that Christianity is the truth and here are the reasons for it, but what is true about the reality of living a Christian life in a fallen world where the fallen world opposes you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's not enough time given to that because everything is sort of intended almost to lift you up constantly without acknowledging the place where many people are. And so I think you're absolutely right about that. We don't spend enough time talking about the fact that being a Christian is going to be very hard a lot of times, that we're still going to have these circumstances in life. It's not just, if you have enough faith, you're going to be prosperous in all these ways. That's a totally errant theology. And when we have too much of that going on in culture, then Christians start getting the wrong ideas and don't realize that suffering is going to be part of this life.
Well, you know what? Suffering is not just part of the life for the Christian, it's part of the life for the non-Christian too. And even those that are following feelings as the ultimate guide, happiness as the ultimate goal, judging as the ultimate sin, and God as the ultimate guess. But that is not going to be portrayed on the Super Bowl halftime or any of the ads or any of the other kinds of ways that these alternate views, ultimately false views of reality are going to be promoted. No, it's always made to look wonderful. And, anyway, it's so frustrating to me because when you're aware how these ideas work, you see the lies there, but it's frustrating to see so many Christians taken in by them.